All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap the Mets versus Braves series as well as all the latest news, Mets versus Mariners series. I had that typed down wrong. As we are live to recap the latest news and rumors in New York Mets land. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for new episodes of our show that are recorded live after every single series of games during the regular season. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all that great stuff. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show. We'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for my co-host Frank's instant post-game reactions after every regular season game, which are titled the Mets Frankly Postgame. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. Also, make sure to give us a 5-star review. It would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into this episode number 161 of our show, as the Mets finally come off of a series victory for the first time, I would say, in about 4 weeks. It's been a while since the Mets have actually taken a series from somewhat of a team, considering how much of bad baseball has been played over these past few months. They finally seem to maybe be turning the corner. I really don't know, but as of right now, they've put themselves in a position where maybe they could be fighting for first place in the division towards the end of or the beginning of next week when they play the Phillies. And then they also have 6 games against 2 teams that are below them. But we all know that they could possibly give them fits because it's the New York Mets. But for those of you here in the chat, we've got Matt in here, Lane in here, Daniel, for those of you in here, make sure to hit the like button if you have not already. Of course, we are live after every single series to talk about this team, good or bad, no matter what. We have no hiding whatsoever to do. We are very, very straightforward, very honest. If we see something we don't like, we're going to tell you. So let me get into every single thing that I liked or disliked, obviously. But right now, let me just say, I think right now for Mets fans, they're kind of holding their breath, obviously, with the recent news about Francisco Alvarez. Now, we don't know what the deal is as of right now, but it is a hand-related injury, which is the third time he has had a hand-related injury. So we're kind of just holding our breath, hoping that the news is great. It's actually funny because not really funny, but it's ironic because right before that game started, I was prepping a segment to talk about how good Francisco Alvarez was doing ever since coming back from AAA, and then obviously with the fantastic timing that all of my plans usually have to have, he ends up getting injured. And maybe that's another way to connect the trajectory of how this thing has been going for Francisco Alvarez over these first few years of his career. But again, we're kind of just awaiting. We'll get into the latest of what we have heard. Obviously, we'll get into some stuff that we obviously saw on the field. We'll get into some stuff about Nolan McLean and things. Plenty of things to talk about, obviously, in the span of these 72 to 96 hours that we have had since the last episode. It's definitely been eventful. Obviously, the Mets playing on a Williamsport Little League field last night for the series finale and able to close out this series and able to get their first series victory, like I said, for the first time in multiple weeks. But I think a lot of people are ready to figure out what this team really, really is made of. Going down the stretch, this final stretch of the season, close to September baseball, which is very, very important. They have, at this point, put themselves in a position where they're just going to need to win. Just keep on winning. That's pretty much it. And I know that that's kind of been seen as a concern recently of them putting together 9 good innings. But the Mets they've just put themselves into one of these stretches where they're going to have to lay it out all on the line, and someone is going to have to end up stepping up. Now, will it end up being the young guys that maybe are poised to make their debut, such as Nolan McLean, maybe Brandon Sproat down the line to help this team get a little bit of volume? Maybe, but there are still a lot of question marks, and probably more question marks that there should be when it's a team that is supposed to be contending after the trade deadline. So it's definitely concerning. I'm not going to sit here and say that this team is completely back after a series win, because there still is things that need to be cleaned up. And there still have been plenty of things on the field that have just continued to be a snowball problem for this team over and over and over again. We've talked about it, of, the inconsistency with the offense. We've talked about it with the starting pitching starting to wear down a little bit, not able to really give much length. But you're hoping that eventually it can be pieced together. They maybe can pivot to other options if they need to. There could be some roster moves that are made with some eligibility for some of these young guys. So you're hoping that maybe a few of those changes are made, but again, it all really just relies on this team having to perform. There is no, well, we can be better than this, or there's ways there this team can be better, and we have plenty coming up later. They're going to have to perform. And obviously, one of the keys to that, of course, is the top 3 in this lineup right now, which in August, actually, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso have actually done well so far in August. So we're going to need a little bit, and I mean a lot more. Little bit is obviously a small or an under exaggeration. We're going to need a lot of that to carry this team, whether it is offensively. We know that when Francisco Lindor is hot, when Francisco Lindor is hitting, the Mets go as he goes. So again, the difference between Lindor and wins and losses, it's very concerning, but it just basically shows you that Francisco Lindor's got to step up. And it seems like over this last week, which I believe he won National League Player of the Week, which, little accomplishments there. But it just shows you that when he wakes up, maybe the team will start to wake up as well. And from all departments, they got to continue. Anyways, we'll see what happens, how they move to it. I don't know how they continue with what's been going on with this rotation. We'll see what happens. We know that there's some guys who are making either rehab or waiting in the wings right now that we'll see how they fit onto the roster. Those are probably the last moves that you are making, but relatively this team is fully healthy. So they're definitely going to have to figure something out and hopefully find some kind of a middle between the unsustainable baseball they were playing for the first 2 months and the other unsustainable baseball that they were playing for the last 2 months, where it was just a ridiculousness of failure, which I don't think even the worst of teams could have done. I mean, we had a stretch so far in August, I'm pretty sure we blew like 9 games blown by the bullpen, like in 15, 16 games. I mean, it was pretty much unfathomable what has been going on so far in August. And recently, it obviously doesn't make sense to either, if you're talking about the laws of averages or if you're talking about how it all evens out. It really made absolutely no sense how this team was performing like that. I mean, I talked about my concerns visibly about this team, but this was a whole different level of incompetence that you did not expect from a team that had those types of expectations. However, we'll see how they go forward with this. We're hoping that adjustments are made. I don't know when they are going to be made. I don't know what adjustments will be made, but they're going to have to see their top guys step up, because that's basically just how this team is designed at this current point. It's just basically a wing and a prayer right now, which I don't want to talk about it as a wing and a prayer, but however, the Mets are in this position where things can go south. Things can go south really, really quickly if they don't pick it up right now. And obviously, with September baseball approaching, if you're not in a good position by September baseball, it's going to be a really, really hard road to climb out of. And not to mention the Mets' strength and schedule, definitely not in their favor coming up. So we'll see how the Mets even out to that. But however, what we saw on the field against the Seattle Mariners, let's just say the last two games were much better. They were able to get solid pitching from those last two games. The first game was pretty much a little bit more of the same of what we've been seeing. The bullpen just completely exploding. And we're also just seeing the offense kind of pick it up a little bit. But it also has to do with not the fact that the Mets as a whole unit are stepping up. It's the fact that the top three hitters on this team have been playing well in August. So hopefully we start to continue. We still see this continue from players that we know are capable of that. We know that Pete Alonso is capable of being a prolific hitter. We know that Francisco Lindor could carry this team from all aspects. We know what Juan Soto is capable of. So for them to do what they are capable of, that's the only way that this team is going to end up winning. Because I don't see any other way out, to be honest, with how we have had with this pitching staff completely falling off a cliff over these last few months, and this team just built around offense. They're going to have to figure some stuff out, and it's going to have to start with those top three hitters. So that's basically it. That's how we're able to figure this out and how we can continue this consistent winning. I don't like the way that the Mets completely lean on just three guys to pull a rabbit out of their ass every single time, because this needs to be a team game. But that's basically just how they're built right now. That's all they can really, really hope for, is if Lindor, Soto, and Alonso get hot. So anyways, I do want to get into what happened during this series and run down everything that went on in this 3-game series. But there is one thing that I did want to mention beforehand, and that obviously being Paul Blackburn. Now, Paul Blackburn was designated for assignment today. He was granted his full release. He's done. He's not with the Mets anymore. He's not with the Mets organization. He's officially a free agent as of right now. And I think we all kind of expected that more because of with Nolan McLean and him being out of options with Paul Blackburn. He was not going to be available for quite a few days either. And we knew that Paul Blackburn just was not performing at all. He had an even 6 ERA to end his Mets tenure. So again, this was the obvious decision that they had to make. Paul Blackburn, not a great Mets tenure from all aspects. It just was not great. It wasn't even the fact that he wasn't even pitching that well. It was the fact that he just kept getting injured, and he also just kept on getting injured while he was injured. He had about 5 different injuries, 4 different IL stints. It was just a complete mess, and it's basically just something that the Mets needed to cut their losses on. It wasn't a fantastic trade to begin with. The piece that they sent over to the Athletics in exchange, that was Cade Morris, who was their 3rd-round pick in 2023. He's nothing special. I actually got to see him pitch live. He isn't anything special. However, again, he was one of the lone pieces that the Mets did trade to help out the rotation last year, and he did not do anything close to it. He had about, 4 outings for them, got injured. He barely even pitched, and when he did pitch, he was not good. Now, there was one article that was floating around, and I even poked a little bit of fun with it on Twitter, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, and you like to keep track of my very, invasive thoughts. I don't know, but I poked a little bit fun of it. There was an article that went out on the New York Daily News, and I will not completely, I won't completely call out the author because I am a nice guy. But on the Daily News, there was an article that said Paul Blackburn deserved better from the New York Mets. This was after he got designated for assignment the other day. And I mean, I basically just said in 48 innings, he had a 6 earned run average. He had a whip over 1.6. He had a 4.54 fielding independent pitching. And he had a negative .7 wins above replacement. And during that time, he also had a spinal leak surgery, hand contusion, knee inflammation, shoulder inflammation, flu-like illness during his rehab. And he has 13 rehab starts during 3 separate rehab stints. So it's like, I don't know what the topic was. I don't know if the idea was to just say, that maybe he should have got a better chance, or, because he got injured, he should get more chances. But like, did we all see the same Paul Blackburn? Like, we all did. I think we all did. Melosa is saying, who is that? I'm talking about Paul Blackburn, his tenure as a New York Met. So again, I don't understand that whatsoever. I think that, he needed to get DFA'd. He was the odd man out. He just did not pitch well, like whatsoever. He didn't. Whatsoever, he did not pitch well as a New York Met, and he got what he deserved. And we have seen many, many times with David Stearns during his tenure, he will cut losses, whether it is somebody he brings in or somebody else that he brought in. Last year, you guys remember, he brought in Joey Wendell, he brought in Adrian Hauser. Both of them were DFA'd when they did not perform. We saw last year them DFA, guys under contract like Omar Narvaez. There has been plenty of cutting losses. Maybe there should have been a little bit more by David Stearns, but I think there is a statement that is made of, if you don't perform, if you're not in the best ability to give us value, we could cut you loose no matter what. And I think the luxury of having Steve Cohen's flexibility definitely dips into that. But sometimes rough decisions have to be made, and it can't be seen as, an emotional decision. And if that article was to point out an emotional decision, that should not be it. I'm not going to come out here and read the article like it was, it should be relevant, because it's not. He's no longer with the organization, so no article is going to change that. However, it's the point of emphasis of, you don't perform, you're a negative asset to the team, it's likely that you're going to be moved on from. It just happens. And that's exactly what they needed to do with Paul Blackburn. I don't think there's anybody sitting here saying that they're going to miss Paul Blackburn and this was a massive mistake. Doesn't make any sense. Absolutely does not make any sense. I don't know where the topic was supposed to be. Maybe I could link the article in the chat if you guys want to go see it. But again, it's basically not really worth anybody's time, to be honest, because it's kind of stupid. I just really think that's just a dumb thesis to. It's just a dumb thesis in general. So I guess I'll link it here if anybody wants it in the chat, but I don't recommend giving it the clicks. Anyways, in the New York Daily News. So if you want to go read it, you can, but it's just, that's ridiculous. I don't see any single way that should be valid in any sort of way other than some kind of emotional attachment that you have with somebody to the player, which you really should not. He didn't pitch well. He didn't perform. It's a performance-based business, and he's gone. So let's actually get into what actually happened on the field in this Mets versus Mariners series. With the full-on rundown of these games, we'll start off with Game 1. Sean Manaea would make the start, and he gets snake bitten by extra base hits, allowing home runs to Mitch Garver and Cal Raleigh through the first 3 innings, but he was able to finish strong, ending his day with 5 innings pitched, 6 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts on 86 pitches. Down 1-0 in the first, Francisco Lindor would tie the game with his 23rd home run of the year to lead off the game. Down 2-1 in the second, following a leadoff double by Jeff McNeil, Francisco Alvarez would tie the game with a 2-out RBI single. Ronnie Mauricio would follow that up with a single to make it first to third, and Francisco Lindor would give the Mets a 3-2 lead with an RBI single. Down 4-3, down in the game once again, 4-3 in the fourth. After a 2-out single by Ronnie Mauricio, Francisco Lindor would drive in his 4th run of the game with his 24th home run of the year, his 2nd of the game, putting the Mets in front again. Juan Soto would go back-to-back with Lindor with his 30th home run of the year to make it 6-4 Mets. Tyler Rogers would get the 6th and struggle a bit after a 1-out single that would move over to second on a ground out. Cole Young would get Seattle within 1 with an RBI single. Ryan Helsley would come on for the 7th, and for the 2nd straight night, he would implode, allowing a leadoff double and a 1-out RBI double to Eugenio Suarez to tie the game up at 6. Brooks Raley would come in for him and make it worse, surrendering an RBI single to Dominic Canzone, giving the Mariners a 7-6 lead. Raley would then walk the next batter and then surrender a RBI double to Donovan Solano, extending Seattle's lead to 8-6. And Cole Young would follow it later on with a 2-run double, giving the Seattle a commanding 10-6 lead. Ryan Stanek would come in to finally put an end to the inning and get the last out. Frankie Montas would come out of the bullpen for the first time for the 8th and immediately surrender back-to-back doubles to Cal Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez to make it 11-6 Seattle. The Mets would fight back a bit in the 8th, following a leadoff single by Jeff McNeil and a 1-out double by Cedric Mullins. Francisco Alvarez would serve his 7th home run of the year to the opposite field, getting the Mets within 2. Montas would come back out for the 9th and toss a scoreless inning, escaping a bases-loaded jam, but the Mets would go silently in the 9th against Andres Munoz, handing the Mets a slugfest loss in Game 1, 11-9. Game 2, Nolan McLean made his major league debut. More on that later. He'd pitch into the 6th after walking the leadoff hitter. He'd strike out the next batter, get pulled for Gregory Soto, who would strand the runner at 3rd to keep Seattle off the board and finish the inning. The Mets would open the scoring in the 3rd, following a leadoff single by Brett Beatty. Francisco Lindor would drive him in with an RBI double. Soto would come back out for the 7th and toss a scoreless inning with a strikeout. The Mets offense would add some insurance after back-to-back singles by Brett Beatty and Francisco Lindor. Juan Soto would make it 2-0 Mets on a sacrifice fly, and after Lindor would be gunned down at the plate on a Nimmo single, Pete Alonso would drive in Nimmo on an RBI single, collecting his 100th RBI of the season, extending the Mets lead to 3-0. Edwin Diaz would come on for the 8th to bid for a 6-out save, tossing a scoreless 8th with 2 strikeouts. In the 9th, he'd surrender a solo home run to Eugenio Suarez to break up the shutout, but he'd finish the game for his 24th save of the season, evening up the series 3-1. And in Game 3 from Williamsport, Pennsylvania for the Little League Classic, Clay Holmes would make the start, and aside from hitting the first batter of the game and a bumpy 4th inning, he'd end his day with 5 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts on 88 pitches. The Mets would open the scoring in the 2nd, Following back-to-back singles by Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil, Francisco Alvarez would make it 1-0 with an RBI double, and Brett Beatty would follow it up with a 2-run single to extend the Mets' lead to 3-0. The Mets offense would put up another crooked number in the fifth after back-to-back one-out singles by Jeff McNeil and Francisco Alvarez. Mark Vientos would launch his 8th home run of the year, a 3-run shot, and Cedric Mullins would follow him with a double. Francisco Lindor would trade places with him on an RBI double to make it 7-1 New York. Brooks Raley would pitch the sixth and work around a 2-out double and a walk to toss a scoreless inning. Reed Garrett would get the 7th, and he'd surrender a 2-run homer to Cal Raleigh to cut the Mets' lead to 7-3. Ryan Helsley would pitch the 8th and work around a walk to toss a scoreless inning with 2 strikeouts. Tyler Rogers would get the 9th and work around 2 singles to finish the game and secure the series win in Game 3. The Mets are now 66-58 on the season following their first series win since July 26. They sit 5 games back of the Phillies for first place in the National League East, and they hold a 1.5-game lead on the Reds for the final National League wildcard spot going into tonight. So obviously, plenty happened in this series, plenty of events. Obviously, we'll get into all of them one by one, as notorious as they are. Game 1, pretty much the exact same stuff that we have been seeing recently of this bullpen just completely blowing up the way that they have. They have not been able to put batters away. They're walking way too many hitters, and our rotation not really giving us much length, as we been hoping for them to eventually give us someone to pitch into the 6th inning, and it ended up being a rookie in Game 2 of this series who actually did pitch into the 6th inning. However, Sean Manaea, I think that we're getting very, very close to having a conversation about him, of how he really has not been the same since he has come back. It seems like he started off still with the swing and miss stuff, but it just does not seem like he is in full swing right now. And there may be some questions about his health that we may have to get into, but nothing has really flared up just yet. So eventually we might have to talk about that, and he may be a different factor in the postseason if they were to make it. So we'll see what happens there. It seemed like this entire series, the Mets could not get Cal Raleigh out, which I think has also been very, very common throughout the entire league this year with the type of season that he had. But I think Cal Raleigh, in this entire series against the Mets, I don't think there was a single time where this guy either got out. Maybe he got out once or twice, but he had quite a series against the Mets, continuing a brilliant season that he has had. Just an insane feats that he has been reaching as a catcher. Cal Raleigh in this series was 7 for 15. He had 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, a 410 weighted runs created plus. So he was in this series, he was 310% above the league average in overall production in that span. So definitely someone who the Mets, I feel like they wanted to pitch around a little bit, but they actually had to face him in a few of these RBI situations, and he obviously is a big threat in those situations. Now, obviously, Francisco Alvarez, we'll talk about him in a second, who actually had a really good series, but we obviously have a different site of concern for him as of right now. Another good series for Francisco Lindor. It seems like he's starting to get back into the swing of things, which is really, really good. If he gets hot at this time, it would be huge for this team, as we all know. Ryan Helsley, oh boy, I mean, he looked better in that 3rd game in Williamsport, but he just does not look sharp. Doesn't look like he has much of an out pitch. And that's a little bit concerning, let's just say that, since he was expected to be a big part of this bullpen, be maybe the 8th inning guy to set up Edwin Diaz. And I would say that there's a little bit of a concern there, so we'll see what happens. I know that the Mets have other options that could possibly be in the eighth inning, but I think they had their minds set on Helsley, and that has kind of gone a little bit haywire lately. Other than that, overall, this was a better series. It was better played out. I think that we saw a little bit better of the timely hitting. Let's just say that, especially from that top three. Like I said, so far in August, all three of them have been productive, and we're going to need them to step it up a notch for the Mets to get themselves in a better position. And obviously, in these next 6 games going into that series with Philly, where there likely will be fighting for the National League division, depending on where the positioning is. But these are games coming up that they're going to need, and they are going to need their top hitters to come through. So we will see how they do that, but they're going to have to continue what they have been doing recently. Let's see. Another story of note. Reed Garrett continuing to struggle. That's another thing. I don't know what the decision is to be made. I know that he has a minor league option left. So if he continues to struggle like this, I don't think the Mets can afford to have him going out there every single day or every single time and struggling like this. Obviously, he has the notorious walk problem. He's been overall productive this season, but recently it has been really rough for him. So if they do need to option him down to the minor leagues, they were not hesitant to do it with Huskar Brazaban, who started off the season, near spotless, but recently for Reed Garrett, it's been kind of the same thing. And I don't know if it's an overwork type of workload that he is having and he's just kind of run out of gas here, but it has not been good for Reed Garrett. So maybe they do make a decision there. Obviously, they have a few pitchers that maybe will be attached to the roster when they come back healthy. But we'll see what they're going to aim him towards going down this part of the season, because I do think that there are some questions that have to be answered with a guy like Reed Garrett, who can be very, very low floor as a pitcher. However, we know that what he can provide and what he has been able to do over these past few seasons for this team and be a reliable arm in that bullpen. But, there's a possibility he has just been overworked, or just right now he just has not been able to be somewhat effective. And that is the one thing that I think a lot of people are a little bit concerned of right now, whether it is just the bullpen in general of how it kind of has underperformed to the expectation since the trade deadline. But there's also other roles that have been slid into, such as Reed Garrett, where you thought that he would benefit to it. And it doesn't seem like he has been, especially since that trade deadline, which since the trade deadline, Reed Garrett owns a 7.71 earned run average, which again, for relievers is not something you dive into as much. He still is striking out plenty of batters in that span, but it has been rough for him. And we know how finicky relievers can be, but if this continues to snowball, he might be the next guy to get optioned down to AAA Syracuse. And maybe they just look for length, considering what they have been getting from their bullpen or what they've been getting from their starting rotation. Basically, just piecing the innings together is probably what they could go for. Could that be Brandon Sproat? I don't know. Could it just be plugging in Tyler McGill as a long man in that bullpen to maybe take the role that Paul Blackburn was taking on for a second out of the bullpen a few times? Maybe. But we'll see how that decision is made. And I am excited to see what is in store for some of the pitching, obviously, with these young guys. And hopefully the Mets find a way to sort all of this out, because I don't know if it's going to be smoothly with this rotation, but we'll see. I also have been seeing, Brazaban has not been doing well in Syracuse either. So again, I don't know what that's going to look like. But we definitely have to keep our fingers crossed here with hopefully they can just they can just nail things down here. I think that they will eventually figure it out because I think the bullpen on an average day can be a lot better than this. But obviously there is one department that needs to be cleaned up that has been a bugaboo for this team probably for the last 2 seasons, and that being walks, which walks can always lead to bad things. Walks are always something that is a recipe for disaster. You walk the first batter, very, very likely that he comes around to score. A few other notes that I do have here. Mike Sarbaugh. What is going on with this guy? I have absolutely no idea. We had that one play, obviously, where he did not send Taylor against the strong arm of Nolan Jones, but then there was just a completely awful send there of Francisco Lindor, of them trying to be aggressive, and he was just dead on arrival by a mile. I don't know what the deal is, but it's very, very ironic considering Anton Richardson, the first base coach who has been phenomenal for this team all year, where he's been making non-stolen base threats into stolen base threats, and the Mets this year actually broke the franchise record for the most consecutive stolen bases by a Mets team. Just actually, like this week, they just did so. And then you have on the other side of the diamond, Mike Sarbaugh, who I have absolutely no idea what he's been trying to do. Now, we all know how I feel about the coaching staff in general. I think Anton Richardson is at the top of my power rankings list for the Mets coaches and Mets personnel overall. But Sarbaugh is definitely going down that list. I don't think that he will meet the guy that I have in last place, and we all know who I am talking about. But he could be very, very close if he continues to cost us runs like that. Just an awful send. Awful send in that game. Didn't end up really, really mattering. But for him to firmly send him and him just to be dead to rights like that, I don't know. I just think maybe if it was in right field, it would have made sense. But the ball being in left field, them charging, the left fielder, Randy Arozarena, charging from his right, it just made absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. Dumb send. I don't understand as of why, but they needed, obviously the timely hitting for that game, and it was able to be gained back with Alonso getting his 100th RBI of the season, and now he becomes the 4th Mets player with 4 100 RBI seasons in Mets history. So we'll see how they all they form this all together. But Mike Sarbaugh, we're watching you closely. It's we are definitely watching you close. His eyes are on you. If we continue to see mistakes like this, because we do not need more sabotage to this team where they self-inflict themselves offensively. The third base coach enabling things like that also does not help. So awful send by him in that second game. We'll get into some other stuff from that second game, obviously, with Nolan McLean making his major league debut. But first, let's get into the... wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah. But first, there's one more thing. One more piece of notes that I want to get into. Oh, Clay Holmes. Okay. I know a lot of people have been saying moving him over to the bullpen. I have been one of those who have been saying that I just think that the Mets are going to ride this out with him in the rotation. And then come playoff time, if they do end up making the playoffs, they're just going to move him to this long relief role, maybe the role that David Peterson had in the postseason. Because I do understand the one reason as to why they're not doing it, and that is probably because of Clay Holmes not being in the rhythm of being a reliever. I just don't think that with him being a first-year starter, I don't think the Mets want to risk it into having a completely different game plan for him as a reliever. I think that there is a little bit of pushback right now with the Mets. Obviously, Clay has been struggling to go deep into games. However, we've been seeing him continue to go out there every 5 days, with them not really thinking much about moving him over to the bullpen, which again is fine if they want to continue to do that. However, the thing is that even though we can say in context that Frankie Montas was moved to the bullpen, he obviously has more experience as a starter, and with him pitching the way that he was, they had to move him to the bullpen, or they had to do something. He could not be starting every 5 days as bad as he was. But with Clay Holmes, getting him off of the routine of being a starting pitcher in your first year as a starting pitcher, it's definitely a dangerous move, especially with the Mets going into a playoff chase right now, the final stretch of the season. I just don't think that the Mets want to take that risk and say, well, Clay, he can just be a reliever because he's been a reliever before. I feel like the decision to make a move to the bullpen was supposed to be made either in June, maybe, or maybe at the end of May, something like that. So they had a little bit of time for him to make those adjustments. Right now, I just don't think they have any of that time because, again, he is a completely different pitcher right now compared to what he was as a reliever, and I just don't think he would have been effective as a reliever. So, again, I'm not opposed to taking him out of the rotation if you want to, if he's struggling to get through a certain amount of innings, but overall, the quality that he has been providing, the performance that he has been providing, has been a back-end starter who, puts you in position to win every single 5 days. I know he's had a few blow-ups here and then, but he is doing, the usual 3-run ball through 5 innings, which keeps you in the game for the offense to do its work. And obviously sets up the bullpen to, maybe hold it down, especially right now where they are in this certain predicament where they have this bullpen of depth, the super bullpen, or whatever you're calling it, even though it has struggled recently. I feel like they still want to set it up. Probably the best way to set it up is with guys like Clay Holmes still in the rotation. Listen, I'm okay with them using their relievers more than the usual team does because they have a little bit more depth in this bullpen. However, we do need to see at least someone give you length out of that rotation. Someone's going to have to go 6 innings. You're going to have to see 6 innings through one pitcher is going to have to go 6 innings through 7 games. Something. Like, someone's going to have to do that. Someone, because I don't think that the bullpen can survive. No super bullpen can save that. And if the guy who goes through 6 innings is going to have to be a rookie, who I'm going to talk about right now, that is going to be an issue. Let's just say that. It is going to be an issue, because if you're relying on a young kid to carry this rotation, that's rough, especially in a playoff race. So again, speaking of, let's get into that young guy who made his major league debut in Game 2 of this series, that being Nolan McLean. Now, Nolan McLean, one of our top pitching prospects, stormed through the minor league system over these last 2 years, was great in AAA, and obviously he made his major league debut, and everyone got to see their first taste of Nolan McLean, who is one of our highly touted prospects for a while. We know the Mets are big on him, and we know that when he came in as a draft pick in the 3rd round, he was originally a two-way player, a reliever two-way player. He's not doing either of those right now. He's a starting pitcher, and he's not hitting anymore. So, again, we know that this kid is a good athlete, and we got to see it on display as well. However, the Mets relying on him to completely save the day was not ever going to be in the cards. And I said this before this even happened, before his debut even happened. Do not expect him to completely save the day and expect him to just become the ace of the staff. Even though he pitched great, don't expect him to be giving you the volume, the quality, and everything all at once. And you saw he went 5 thirds inning, which we have seen plenty of times from our starting pitchers this season. So again, the Mets were going to have a short rope on it. They weren't going to completely push it. They weren't going to push for length. So obviously the crowd that was booing Carlos Mendoza, it was the right decision for them to make that. Pitchers just have to be babied these days. I'm sorry for everyone's in that old school mode of back in my day, they pitched longer. Well, guess what? Back in your day, they didn't throw 98 miles an hour, and we're facing hitters who can hit the ball over 110 miles an hour. So again, it's a different game now, and that's basically how we just have to live with it. And that's why I say that starting rotations don't exist anymore. They are about a committee. That's pretty much it. That's basically how it is all built. It's about the amount of bodies you have, who's available, and who has enough bullets for the next day, or who has the next bullets for the next week. Either way, Nolan McLean, let's get into the Cowboys' first rodeo. That's what his nickname was going from Oklahoma State. That was his nickname. They called him Cowboy Ohtani because obviously he was a two-way player, so I wanted to do a little bit of a play on that. We all know that I like to put in some of these jokes for some of these graphics. Anyways, Nolan McLean's debut, 5 1/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, no earned runs, 4 walks, 8 strikeouts. He got 11 swings and misses on 91 pitches. He faced 21 batters. Now, a few things that you do need to point out here. He wasn't completely perfect, but he definitely put the great stuff on display. We know that he throws from a low 12-degree arm angle, and it gives him a little bit of deception, and it also puts a little bit more of the fastball shape into perspective. We've talked about this before. Even though his fastball isn't the best, he only has 14 inches of induced vertical break on it. We've talked about vertical approach angle on this show before. You want it hovering around 4. He actually had it put on display of an average vertical approach angle of negative 3.49, which is considerably an elite fastball shape that he can get away with. But obviously with him throwing from that low arm angle, it's pretty much the same factor that you would expect from a 30-degree arm angle throwing at a 4.5 vertical approach angle. But still, that is some solid fastball shape as to where he can have that in the secondary and use a lot more of his high spin stuff, which obviously that we saw a sweeper in your 3,000 RPM, which is, higher than anyone, a curveball with over 3,200 RPM as well with the breaking stuff. His highest grade pitch is actually his curveball at 122 stuff plus. Obviously the sweeper's a big thing for him as well. Against left-handed hitters, he was, throwing a little bit more of the cutter as well. This is wiffle ball stuff that we were seeing from him. However, let's just say there is one thing that I say that kind of holds him tight a little bit and maybe holds him back a little bit, and that being more of the spin and the movement on his stuff, whether it's to the arm side or to the glove side. It definitely limits him to where maybe there might be some sequencing where he can't throw that many strikes. And we saw that actually on display in his debut. He threw a first pitch strike to only 10 of the 21 batters that he faced. However, he did get plenty of called strikes and plenty of swings and misses. Like I said, almost a 30% called strike and whiff percentage, which is near the elites. However, we were seeing him get behind in the count, 1-0, 2-0 a lot. he definitely needs to throw more strikes. That's definitely the main point of emphasis for him, but it's more of just the fact that he needs to just command the zone better. You don't need to you don't need to let's say, categorize strikes with the fact of if you can tunnel the pitches properly and get chases, which he was definitely able to do. And with that, he did give you 5 1/3 of scoreless innings, and he became the second Mets pitcher to earn his first win in his major league debut, giving up no earned runs and 8+ strikeouts. Matt Harvey was the last one to do it, the first one to do it in 2012 for his debut. We also had a little bit of a highlight in the third inning when McLean turned a 1-4-3 double play with the bases loaded. He had a behind-the-back grab. He also fielded his position fairly well. But we all know that he is a really good athlete, and that's the main reason as to why it does get you a little bit exciting where he can create outs as well. We have a lot of pitchers on this team that really focus on what is going in front of the plate, and they're not great athletes, guys who are not great coming off the mound. We have seen plenty of situations with our starting pitchers not covering first base, not reacting well enough. So this next generation of pitchers, hopefully we start to see more outs being created when the ball is put in play and they're able to field their position a lot better. We're seeing a little bit more of a sinker baller that Nolan McLean is, averaging at 95, hopefully keeping the ball a little bit on the ground. So again, the stuff is not completely elite, but it is some nasty stuff if he locates it properly. And that's what we saw from Nolan McLean in his major league debut. It was very, very impressive. Great to see what we saw. And I'm excited to see what this kid can do later on. But, however, adjustments still need to be made with him. He still needs to throw more strikes. He needs to learn how to get ahead in the count, definitely. And then, obviously, more of the utilization of his sinker. Because, again, if you're going to use your sweeper a lot, you're going to have to use something to the glove side a little bit more, and the sinker is obviously going to have to be that. But sweepers, again, sweepers can be nasty, but if they're not located properly, they are a very, very easy pitch to pull if you are a pro, if you are a professional hitter. So let's just say that Cowboy Ohtani, as D is saying in the chat, a successful debut for him, and it was very, very impressive. It was great to see. And he's just the start of the pipeline of pitchers that the Mets have coming up in this farm system that we are excited to see going forward. Will we see Brandon Sproat this year? We'll see. Jonah Tong, I doubt, is going to pitch in the majors this year, so sit tight on that, guys. But we will eventually see Jonah Tong. They are expecting it. He is now in AAA. He actually made his AAA debut, and he was fantastic. So I don't know how long he is going to be staying there, but I think that he does need AAA innings on his arm beforehand before he does get called up, and I think that those AAA innings are going to overlap into next year. And then as well as Christian Scott, who actually threw a bullpen session last week, so hopefully he gets healthy, and it would be great to see him back out there on the pitcher's mound. For those of you, obviously, I think everybody does get excited with this. Everybody gets excited of, the Harvey, Syndergaard, DeGrom, Wheeler. Everybody wants a repeat of that and wants a second chance at that. I personally don't, because in context to that entire rotation was not able to stay healthy for like a entire turn through the rotation. They only had one healthy turn throughout that rotation the entire time when all those guys were in the majors. It's crazy to think about, right? So I don't want to have the injury scares. I don't want to have the constant, is this guy available? Is he going to be healthy? What is going to be the situation with these young guys? I want them to create their own path. I also want it to sustain a little bit longer as compared to what we had, where it all basically fell apart by 2017, 2018. So again, I don't want to see it as that. I don't want people comparing it to that. I'm sure people will still do it because everybody needs a great narrative to follow and a great storybook to follow. But I don't want to see, any relation to that, because I feel like we all knew how quickly and how it ended. I don't want to see that again. I don't think anybody wants to see that again, because I do think it is one of the few, notorious tragedies in Mets franchise history that young pitching staff was not able to last as long as it did. So again, I want them to pave their own path. Game is a lot different now, and great debut for Nolan McLean. Some things rough around the edges, obviously, but you can obviously see the talent that this kid has on the mound. And of course, the presence that he gave on the mound as well. It was very, very impressive. And seeing him field his position like that was very, very cool. It just shows you that the future is definitely bright in the pitching department. And these starts of Frankie Montas and, Tyler McGill sweating through 4 innings, they're close to coming towards the end. But like we have been saying this entire time, we just got to fill in time until that happens. So we're getting very close until these young guys are in the majors. But, they're just going to have to fill in from there. And if it does include pain, it includes pain. But they're just going to have to continue, to develop. And that's what's very, very important for these young guys, because that they can be good. Let's hope that they are at their very, very best. And hopefully we have a pitching staff to be proud of and not a pitching staff to sweat out every single time, like this pitching staff that has been not notoriously awful, but it has been a rough go of it. Let's just say that. A rough go of it. It has not been fun. It has not been something of, I'm excited to see this guy pitch. It's more of, let's grind through this and just try to be somewhat serviceable. So hopefully that these young guys can come up and they make a difference. But, you never know. Prospects are suspect until they prove it in the major leagues. You never know. So the Mets are just going to have to wait it out, and we will see how that looks. But great debut for Nolan McLean. Excited to see what he can do going forward. He's lined up to face the Braves for his next start, so I guess we're going to see how good he really is, because the biggest test always for a Mets pitcher in the House of Horrors known as Atlanta, no matter how bad that team is, they'll always find an upper hand on us, so we'll see how Nolan McLean is able to do against Atlanta. So that's definitely going to be a good test for him. Matt saying McLean versus the Devil Magic. Oh yes, we all know. McLean versus the haunted house of Truist Park, which will never go away, no matter how bad the Braves are this year. You'd never get too comfortable with that. Anyways, let's move on to recap and be done with this series. Moving on with studs and duds the best way that we know how. One player in this series that was very, very good, one that was not. And I obviously want to give the stud to Francisco Lindor. I also can give it to Nolan McLean, but I think he got good enough recognition, obviously. But Francisco Lindor was great in this series. Let's just say that. It seems like he's starting to heat up in August. So far in August, he has had quite a good stretch. Let me bring up the numbers that he has had in August, because he has been, pretty good recently. He's starting to heat up a little bit. He's starting to take some better swings. And I'm hoping that this is the start of a big run for Francisco Lindor, because he has been very, very good recently. In August, he is slashing .350, .435, .633 with a .201 weighted runs created plus. And that's the type of stuff we're going to need down the stretch from Francisco Lindor. And we know that it hasn't been the best season for him. He's had a really rough stretch since that broken pinky toe that he had, but it seems like he's starting to rev it up a little bit. And hopefully we don't have anything else that slows it down. As for duds, I think I'm going to give, Ryan Helsley could be a really good one coming from Matt. You can put Brooks Raley in there because he definitely made that first game worse as well. I think both of them could possibly share it. You can put Reed Garrett in there because he has not been very, very sharp. There comes to a point where you can you could put Minaya in there because he definitely was not as sharp, but he did get through those 5 innings. He was able to go through it. The pitching side definitely. You can more establish to the dud category because the offense actually did a good enough job. Let's just say that in that series. Hopefully it continues. And then I think guys on the offense collectively, there was a few that maybe had a few rough series. I mean, Cedric Mullins is another one. Evan's saying in the chat. Mullins, I think, has been competitive enough, but he still really hasn't been great. But in this series alone, let's just see. He wasn't fantastic. 2 for 12 in this series. Let's just say that. But I don't know. I think he's been okay. Can we probably get the same that we're getting from Tyrone Taylor? Probably. But we'll see how it goes going forward. I don't really expect much to get from him. So anyways, I think before we get into everything else and everything going forward, let's get into some injury news. Now, there is one injury that we do have to talk about here beforehand, and that being Tyler McGill, who made his second rehab start yesterday afternoon for AA Binghamton, tossing 3 1/3 innings pitched, 1 hit, 0 walks, 9 strikeouts on 55 pitches with 39 strikes. Despite his unknown role going forward, McGill is expected to be stretched out as a starter and ramp up to 75 to 80 pitches before activation. McGill was placed on the injured list in mid-June due to a right elbow strain. So we'll see what happens with Tyler McGill. I don't know if there is a more shocking corresponding move that they do make to bring him back, or maybe he is just activated and sent down to AAA, because I do believe he has some minor league options left. So we'll see how that is decided. He does have 1 minor league option left, so maybe he does stay in the minor leagues. We'll see. For those of you who are hyping up his rehab start of 9 strikeouts, don't get into it. Don't be teased like that. Don't do that. Tyler McGill, we've talked about this before. Tyler McGill is a tease. He is not someone who can be trusted. And any good signs that you see from him, take it with a grain of salt, because we know exactly what Tyler McGill is until proven otherwise. No offense to him whatsoever. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I think we have seen for a good amount of years now 5 years now going, that Tyler McGill definitely cannot be trusted as a full-time starting pitcher, and he has a lot of warts to him. Even though he does have a good amount of talent, has not been able to apply to it. But there is another injury that we obviously have to get into, and that's obviously the main concern right now for the Mets as we hold our breath, and that being Francisco Alvarez, what has been going on with him. Now, again, like I said, I had a segment for Francisco Alvarez lined up about him completely returning to form since he came back from AAA Syracuse. And of course, the night after the game that they play, Francisco Alvarez ends up leaving the game with an injury. So when it comes to the situation with Francisco Alvarez, here is what we know so far. He exited yesterday's game in the 7th inning after jamming his right thumb into second base, and he will be flying to New York today to get an MRI exam. Now, the main reason as to why this is concerning is because this is now the third time he has had a hand injury, which he has brought up some concerns. This is the second time this year. He underwent surgery on his left thumb to repair a torn ligament back in April of 2024. He also underwent surgery in his left hand to repair a fractured hamate bone back in March. Back in March this year, before the season started. And he ended up returning from the injured list in 2024, struggled, went down to AAA Syracuse, and since being called up, he's been hitting fairly well. And once again, it looks like we have, yet again, another thumb injury, this time on the right hand. So is it a weird oddity that we are continuing to see Francisco Lindor injure his hand? As a catcher, I'd say that it's probably common, but the fact is that all of these injuries have come when he was providing offense. He obviously broke his thumb landing awkwardly going to second base the first time around. He hurt his thumb while he was taking batting practice in spring training this year, and then he just hurt his thumb sliding into second base. I'm starting to get a little frustrated, I can't lie, considering this is now the third time that he has had a hand injury in the last 2 seasons. With him being a catcher, I really don't understand the need to ever slide in head first. It's really just dumb. But for him, he needs to be sliding feet first now. Like, I feel like that needs to be the wake-up call for Francisco Alvarez, that he needs to keep his hands out of danger, because, again, even if he does end up having an issue going on the IL, what's going to happen when he ends up coming back? Is he going to struggle once again to get a feel for the bat, and he's going to struggle offensively once again? Because, again, I don't know how many times the Mets can afford underperformance from the bottom half of this lineup. And it starts with Francisco Alvarez, who is a big X factor for this offense outside of that top 4. So is this basically just what Francisco Alvarez is, where he's just constantly getting hurt and he gets constantly derailed by injury? I'm not trying to establish this as what he is right now, because, again, he is 23 years old. There's plenty of time, but it's getting a little tedious. It's getting a little overwhelming, to a sense of, well, is this guy just going to continue to get hurt? Are we going to continue to see things get in his way from being the player that, we expected him to be? Because when he did come back from the minor leagues, he was doing fantastic. I can do a little bit of the rundown of the revenge of the troll, but it looks like the second base bag got revenge on his thumb once again. He was doing fantastic. He was batting .293, slashing 388, 603, slugging, 4 home runs, 13 RBIs, 177 weighted runs created plus. He was hitting the ball harder as well, finding the barrel zone. He wasn't popping up. He wasn't late on it. He wasn't late on any fastballs. The chasing has gone down a little bit. There's still been a few rough around the edges situations. He is hitting the ball in the air a lot more. And we're also seeing him pull some fly balls as well. And this has been obviously since the 21st of July when he was called up, and he's been hitting a lot better, and he's been deepening the lineup better. However, it seems like every single thing that happens with Francisco Alvarez always ends up with a catch to it. And this is another reason as to why I've been very hesitant to buy into Francisco Alvarez, because it always seems like something continues to go wrong. Something always seems to shift his momentum into becoming a complete player or a good major leaguer. And it gets frustrating. I'm not trying to completely bag on the kid and get mad on it at him completely individually, but however, there is a point of the fact that we knew what the impact of Francisco Alvarez was, of him being kind of this special talent at the catcher position compared to the usual catchers that we have had over these last few seasons. The catcher position has not fared well for this Mets team. And if he's just going to blend into that once again, it's not going to make that much of a difference. Catchers get banged up a lot. However, in this case, all 3 times have not been with him catching behind the plate. He's recovered better from ding-ups that he has had behind the plate than actual injuries that he has had while just batting. And that's my full concern of Francisco Alvarez. We said this once again when he needed the other surgery before this season started. We said it. Will he be affected by this surgery again? Will he be affected by it? And it seemed like his hitting was affected by it somewhat. He just did not look like himself. He was not doing well. So is this going to happen again? Because if we have another injury here, another issue, which with radio silence since last night when Carlos Mendoza said that he's getting an MRI, I'm not feeling good about this. I really am not. And I'm not going to sit here just to be, the negative guy here, but I'm just saying it's like Alvarez, it just seems like it doesn't take much to derail him. And that's what really concerns me the most. That's what has continued to concern me, is not just his durability, but the overall momentum of building on things he has not been able to do. He's been fairly inconsistent offensively throughout his entire career. We've seen adjustments with him offensively that shouldn't have been made, thanks to a lovely genius that is in the clubhouse every single day, that they still employ for 4 years. But I digress, because I ain't going to get into him. However, there's only so much that can be controlled by him. And obviously, this is some tough luck. Seems like he could never catch a break. It always seems like something, when it goes right for him, it goes wrong real fast. And if it ends up being another surgery that he needs on his thumb, it's just a weird situation to have where you have 3 different, that doesn't seem to be in relation to each other, 3 different hand surgeries, 3 different hand injuries in oddity when you're a catcher and you weren't even catching when it happened. So maybe that's just the fact of it being an oddity as to why I think there's people that are still hopeful about this, but it is still very frustrating to continue to see these ding-ups when it happened, being when he was hitting so well. And it seemed like he was starting to really get his groove back. My whole fear is, will that come back whenever he does play a game again? Which I'm sure he will. But when he does come back, are we going to see that same Francisco Alvarez we've been seeing since he was recalled from Syracuse this year? I don't know, because there's been plenty of times where injuries have derailed him and we were not seeing a Francisco Alvarez we're used to. Because just because he comes back on the roster, on the active roster, doesn't mean he is back. And that's the concern that I do have. And that's why it's been really hard for me to buy into his bat, because it always just seems like there's something to derail him when things are going well. And that's what sucks. I hope he's good. I hope he's okay. Fingers crossed that everything comes back negative. But one thing I will say is that this radio silence since doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't. Maybe it's a different situation because maybe they don't have MRI machines in Williamsport and they needed to travel back to New York. I'm hoping that's the case. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not worried about this entire situation right here. Because no news usually is bad news when you're talking about an injury in baseball. And from at this current moment, if you were to search his name up on Twitter, it doesn't look like we still have an update. Doesn't seem, yeah, it still seems that we don't have an update. So hopefully he's okay, because we're going to need his hot bat down the stretch. But as the minutes and hours tick by, I'm not feeling confident right now. And we'll see what the update is eventually. But again, like I said, hold your breath, because the radio silence can always scare you. It always does. But either way, the Mets still, no matter what, are going to be playing games no matter what, if Francisco Alvarez is in the lineup or not. And they're going to be playing games tomorrow. They have an off day today, as I am live. For those of you, when it goes out on audio, it'll be later today when it goes out at 9. But let's get into what they have going forward, and that being this series in D.C. starting tomorrow. Now, this Nationals team, they have not had a good season whatsoever. You can see on our graphic, just from face value here, that it has not been a good season for them. They have a negative 151 run differential, but I'm not going to sit here and count them out with the young talent they have on this team that, you know, could challenge the Mets of how they do match up with them. So either way, let's get into the probables for this upcoming series in DC. Game 1 will end up going to David Peterson for the series opener, looking to shake off a huge implosion last time out. He'll face the more confusing and polarizing, one of the more confusing and polarizing Met killers, Jake Irvin, who seems to really just pitch very well against the Mets and nobody else. First pitch is tomorrow night at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time on SNY. Game 2 will go to Kodai Senga. He'll face the rookie right-hander Brad Lord. First pitch will be Wednesday night at 6:45 p.m., just like Game 1, Eastern Time on SNY. Game 3 will go to Shamanaya for the series finale. He'll face the suddenly struggling southpaw, say that 5 times fast, Mackenzie Gore. First pitch is Thursday afternoon at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time on SNY. So like I said, this Nationals team is in last place, and they are in last place for a reason. And one of the main reasons as to why has been the underperforming of their starting rotation. Jake Irvin, like we said, who they are going to be facing, who's done very well against the Mets in his career, which is very, very odd, but we've seen the Mets make, you know, awful starting pitchers do very, very well. He has struggled a lot this year. He actually leads the league in home runs surrendered, so our big power bats definitely need to look out for that. Mackenzie Gore started off the season well, but recently it has not been good. Still don't understand why they didn't trade him. He has been really struggling with his control as well. Has been getting hit hard recently, has had some really rough starts recently. And as for the rest of their rotation, their best starter statistically this year has probably been Brad Lord, who they're going to be facing in Game 2 of this series. However, a lot of his appearances have been out of the bullpen. So again, it's whatever. As for them offensively, James Wood has been struggling a lot, and I mean a lot, in this second half since the All-Star break. And I'm pretty sure he leads the National League in strikeouts this year. So again, he really has struggled. He still is having overall a good season, but he's definitely fallen off a lot. They have some offensive weapons, such as Josh Bell still in this lineup, who is having an okay season, but not fantastic. We know that Alex Call, Alex Call, veteran outfielder, who is having a really good season at the plate at 117 OPS plus. Dylan Cruz has struggled a lot this season. I'm pretty sure he just got recalled up. And then there is also Jacob Young, who we know can play really, really good defense in center field, not much with the bat. But they also do have some guys that can steal bases, such as C.J. Abrams, who has 26 on the year, and he's having also a really, really good season, a near 800 OPS. But their lineup in general has been underperforming. K-Bear Ruiz has not been good. Nate Lowe was actually designated for assignment and just signed by the Boston Red Sox. So that's definitely some stuff to that's some stuff to look out for. Again, with their first base position, I'm pretty sure Ahmed Rosario is gone. He's with the Yankees now. So we'll see, how they can figure that lineup. Brady House is another one who has had some limited playing time with this team, but he's also struggled, former draft pick of theirs. And like I said, James Wood struggling, their top guy, who has not been good. Luis Garcia having a pretty average season, but he can also be a real pest for the Mets. And then, of course, their bullpen, which is probably... I don't even know. I don't even know if it even is their strong suit anymore. It was at one point, but it is not. This year has not been one of the best, even though the Mets, I'm pretty sure, got shut down by that bullpen. Kyle Finnegan, who is considered their closer, has not had a good season whatsoever. And he's also been banged up, I'm pretty sure, as well. Jackson Rutledge, another one, he's been really rough, but he's been having some of the most innings in that bullpen. It's been a struggle for them entirely. And we'll see, how they play the matchups or whatever. But this is a Nationals team that is not going anywhere. We know that they aren't. And hopefully the Mets can take advantage of that. But you just never know. The Nationals have some options. Let's just say they have some pieces that can give the Mets some fits. Let's just say that. So we will see how the Mets are able to respond from back-to-back wins with the against the Seattle Mariners. We will hope that Francisco Alvarez is healthy, and some guys to look out for in this series. Let me just say, Pete Alonso, I'm looking to you. I'm looking for a power surge in this series. Like I said, Jake Irving gives up a lot of home runs. You also have Mackenzie Gore, who has been giving up a lot of home runs recently. Take advantage of that. Find your pitch and absolutely destroy it. We will see what is going on with the catching position with Francisco Alvarez, like I just said. And then Francisco Lindor, he's got to keep doing what he has been doing. And then also we have the bullpen too, which we know the bullpen has had a lot of its struggles at Nationals Park. It always seems to haunt them in Nationals Park. So hopefully they can tighten that stuff up. And one of the key guys that I also do think is going to be very, very, a guy that you're definitely going to see probably more of compared to anybody else in that bullpen. I do think that you are going to see Gregory Soto a little bit more than you have been seeing recently, because there is a lot of left-handed bats in this Nationals lineup. So we will see how they play those matchups, but we know that Gregory Soto was brought in here to dominate left-handed hitters, and there is a lot of lefties on this team in Washington. So we will see how they respond to it. Let's hope that there is no bullshit that we see with this team, and hopefully they just take care of business in DC. It would be nice. However, we've seen the Mets struggle with a lot less. We've seen the Mets struggle with good teams. We've seen them struggle with bad teams. So again, do I know if the Mets for certain are going to do well in this series? I don't know. but they're going to have to continue to keep it going. This is a team that they can beat. However, will they? Only time will tell. Either way, the Mets have 6 games coming up here against lesser division rivals this year that should be teams that you should beat on the road, and it will set them up, I guess, somewhat nicely, depending on who the Phillies are playing. I'm pretty sure they are starting up a series with the Mariners, which they're up 6-0 on right now. So the Mariners obviously are a competitive team that could beat them. So we're going to have to see that. And then they face the Nationals, then they face us. So the Mets definitely have to take advantage. If they're still going for that division, they are going to have to take advantage of these games. And they're just going to have to keep on winning, because they definitely do not have that much margin for error in this playoff race going into September. But either way, we have hit the 1.5 hour mark here. And I think I'm going to end it here. Obviously, it's just me here today, so we don't have to go the full 2 hours. And then obviously, we are still just waiting out the news with Francisco Alvarez. And I don't want to sit here and just, ramble on while we expect some news to come out, which we don't know when is going to come out because it's been completely radio silent. Like I said, who knows what's going to be the situation, but we'll see how they handle it. We'll see that the Mets will be sure-handed behind the plate if Francisco Alvarez has to go on the injured list, with guys like Hayden Sanger coming up, or Luis Torrens, good defensively. Offensively, you're kind of missing that, but if the Mets have to go that route, they will have to go that route, and hopefully he is doing okay, and hopefully there is not much concern. Hopefully the x-rays come back negative, but you never know. You just never know, and to be honest, I'm not very positive at this current point. I apologize, but with the radio silence we've gotten over these past 12 hours, not feeling good about it. Not really feeling good about it. But other than that, we're going to wrap it up here. For those of you in here, for those of you watching, for those of you who watched the entirety time, popped in for a little bit, thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation live in the future, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel. Turn on those post notifications to not miss when we go live. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features my co-host Frank, his post-game reactions after every single regular season game. Follow all of us individually, including my co-hosts who are not here, Frank and Andrew. And of course, we have an off day. Everybody enjoy the rest of the off day, and the Mets get back to work at 6:45 in D.C., going into a tough playoff race. Hopefully they can continue and build off this series win against Seattle. So let's go Mets, and we will see you guys next time.